In this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you some tips and tricks for taking your church's live stream to the next level. And the best part is you don't have to go dumping a ton of money into new gear. There's a good chance you already have the gear that you need. You just need to know how to optimize and use it properly. I thought one of the best ways for me to teach you these concepts is to actually show you exactly what I'm doing to optimize and improve the live stream at Grace Church in Melbourne, Florida. A few months ago, my family and I moved to Florida and we made Grace Church our home. We love it there. It's a great staff. It's a great community of people, and they really have similar values that I do when it comes to worship and production. I'm gonna link their YouTube channel down below so you can check out the past few live streams. In this video, I'll be talking about the live stream on June 12th. I'm not sure when I'm gonna publish this video, but anything that I talk about in particular to the nuanced changes and tweaks I'm making, you'll see the results on June 12th, which was yesterday. Today's Monday, June 13th. I want this series of videos to continue our Worship Tech Booth Makeover series, but I want to make this a bit more interaction. Rather than me thinking of ideas of upgrades and implementing them and then showing you, I'd rather actually have you be part of the process. So I'll have some questions later on this video of what ideas do you have to make this system better? And I want to hear from you down below in the comments. So first I want to give you a lay of the land. At front of house, they have a M32 and Wave sound grid for live sound. And then they've got a Vista lighting system with a computer, an iMac running ProPresenter for visuals. And then on the other side of the same tech booth, kind of facing the back wall of the room, we have our little broadcast suite. You've got an ATEM video switcher, and you've got a computer. It's just a Mac Mini that was previously using Wirecast. You'll hear about some updates we made there, but that's like our little video broadcast workstation. Then this half of the back side of the tech booth is where we're just storing microphones and miscellaneous gear. It's definitely a mess. It's going to get organized. This is going to be one of our projects here. I know Adam would be very, very disappointed if he saw how unorganized this was, but we got some ideas. And this is actually my first question. What would you guys do? I'm thinking of getting a nice toolbox from Lowe's or Home Depot to put underneath this shelf, similar to the toolbox we have at South Fellowship Church in Colorado. And the goal being this shelf here can just be pretty much clutter free and only used when you actually need to put a laptop there to work on or something like that. That's very temporary. There's all sorts of room underneath this shelf right here for drawers and storage bins or other things that we need to put. Plus there's actually other rooms back side stage that we could also store a lot of stuff too. So we'll make a whole other episode about that. That's not really the priority of this episode. But let's talk about the stuff I did this past week. This is kind of week one of actually getting to serious work on these things. I'm working alongside Dylan, their worship pastor. He'll be the guy you'll see singing in the videos. Really cool guy. Love that dude. And it's been a lot of fun kind of putting our brains together and how we can make these improvements. So I got back here from Colorado. We're kind of bouncing back and forth in both Florida and Colorado. So if you're confused, are you like, Jake, are you in Colorado still? Yes. But are you in Florida? Yes. The answer is yes to both of those questions. We're now here in Florida for a good chunk of the summer, so I'm excited over the next couple months here in June and July especially, how much we'll be able to continue to improve these systems. And to give you a little more context of their existing video switching and encoding setup or before Boxcast, and there's still quite a few things we want to change, but what they were coming from was the ATEM that you see here on the screen. This is their main video switcher. All the cameras and ProPresenter feeds come into this ATEM. The problem is this ATEM, the audio jacks on the back of it are broken. So Dylan came up with a good temporary solution. He had an ATEM Mini sitting around where what's happening is the program feed now from this ATEM goes into camera input 1 on the ATEM Mini, and then he uses the audio in on the ATEM Mini to pull the broadcast mix in over one of those 3.5 millimeter jacks. And you know, the broadcast mix is coming from the M32 there. It's actually coming from a Logic template, which gets sent to the M32, and then it goes into the ATEM Mini. So lots of steps going on there. We want to fix that, or like basically consolidate this down as much as we can here in the near future. But when it comes to encoding, what was happening is that the ATEM Mini was outputting the program feed into Wirecast over the ATEM's video capture USB port there, where you can capture your program into your computer, streaming software from the ATEM over USB. It was going into Wirecast, and then with Wirecast, they were then encoding and sending their stream where they wanted to. But there's some limitations. There's not really good automation features built into Wirecast for the stream to kick on and kick off. And I feel like the encoding quality was suffering. Just the amount that Wirecast was like crunching down the video and audio quality, so that when you saw it online, it just felt like it was just not, you were not getting all the data that should be there. It was just being compressed too much, and it degraded the quality. So as you guys know, I'm a pretty big fan of Boxcast. So what Dylan did is he ordered the Boxcast encoder, and he signed up for the monthly plan. It's like 99 bucks or 150 bucks a month. Whatever plan allows us to send our live stream to both Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, and it's gonna automate it. And we have a private stream set up for rehearsal through first service, which is a great way for us to kind of test everything out, make sure everything is working fine, and be able to review the live stream before the second service, the 11 a.m. service, which is when we actually go live. So the program out from the ATEM Mini here is going into the input of Boxcast, and that has both the video and audio for the stream. The volunteers loved it. They were really excited to see that they don't have to fidget with Wirecast anymore, because now Boxcast completely automates the process. And before too, they were only streaming to Facebook, and then they had to export the video from Wirecast and then upload it to YouTube. But now the stream goes simultaneously to YouTube and Facebook. And if Grace Church, we ever want to set up like a church online page where we have a video player on our website that's, you know, separate from any social media accounts, we can do that with Boxcast as well, because Boxcast provides that dedicated video player, or the embed code that comes straight from Boxcast's servers. So that's step number one of a change that we made. The Boxcast, it was a new piece of gear we had to implement. The rest of what I'm going to talk about was not new gear. It's just changing what we already had. But to me, the investment that's like $400 or $500 into the Boxcaster device, and then the monthly streaming plan, is totally worth it for the reliability, the quality of the stream, and the convenience of it having it automated so that nobody's gonna forget to go live. The next thing we worked on this Sunday was the broadcast mix template. I'll end up making a dedicated video to walk you through in detail this template, but for now, I just want to show you we're using Logic Pro as the DAW, and this is what they were already using. You guys know I prefer Ableton, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what DAW you're using. Use whichever DAW you're going to actually learn. That's what Adam says all the time, and he's right. You know, I had to use Logic Pro maybe more like 5 to 10 years ago. In the past 5 to 7 years, I feel like I've used Ableton a lot more. But all these DAWs can pretty much accomplish the same thing. They all have their pros and cons. It's just pick whichever one is your personal favorite and the one that you'll take the time to learn. We have the broadcast mix computer backstage in a side room. It's kind of like their little green room because it's a little bit more isolated, or actually a lot more isolated when it comes to the sound coming out of the PA system. You're definitely, you know, hearing a ton of the PA when you're at front of house. So, you know, maybe if you had really good isolating in your headphones, you could mix at front of house, but still you're feeling all the bass from the subwoofers, and it could really throw off your sense of a mix. What's exciting about this church is that the building is brand new, and they're kind of finishing out a portion of it for the kids ministry. And I hope that would be cool if they had one of the current rooms being used for kids ministry as kind of like a creative production studio for worship ministry someday. So then the broadcast mix could be in a completely separate room and be far more isolated than the backstage or front of house. But all that said, that's where this laptop is. It's a MacBook Pro running Logic, and we're sending multi-track audio from Waves Super Rack over the Waves SoundGrid network into this computer. So we're getting the raw audio in this computer, and then we're mixing it down and then sending this audio back to the M32, where then the analog or digital to analog conversion happens to get the audio to the ATEM Mini Pro. So lots of steps there, and a couple things we want to solve. One would be how we're sending audio from this broadcast mix computer into the video switcher. All right, so that's the overview of the current broadcast mix. So I want you guys to hear a quick before and after. This was just from me diving into the broadcast mix template probably for about 2 hours. I removed a lot of plugins. I added a few that I preferred, but overall, I was just simplifying the process, and I'll make another more in-depth video of this, but I'll just give you kind of a quick before and after. All right, and here was this past Sunday.
Never final when the Father's in the room. Oh, failure's never final when the Father's in the
So that gives you an idea of some of the changes I made to the broadcast mix. I overall just tried to simplify what was going on. I implemented a little bit more bus processing, so the vocals go to a bus, and the drums go to a bus, and the rest of the instruments go to a bus before they actually hit the main bus. And that allows me to have just a bit more control over those different groups of instruments and add some compression to them, so that, you know, it just kind of all gels together a little bit better. You don't want to add too much compression to them, but you know, simple things like color coding the template. So again, I'll make another video walking through the details of this. All right, item number 3, we adjusted camera exposure and some of the color profiles. So here are the cameras that we're using in the setup. They're mostly Blackmagic. At front of house, we have a wide shot with a 24-70 Sigma lens on a Blackmagic 6K Pro. And beside the tech booth, there's a Blackmagic Studio 4K camera, one of the newer ones, and it has a 24-70 lens. So that's what's getting our tighter shot on the worship leader. On the side stage, kind of by the keyboard player there, is a Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera with a Micro Four Thirds 12 to 60 millimeter Panasonic lens. And then in the drum cage, we have the drum cam, which is a Sony a6300. We did switch around some of the lenses on the different cameras, and some of the positioning of the bodies. I wanted to have the Studio 4K with a larger monitor be the camera for the follow cam with that 70 to 200 lens, so it's a little bit easier to see and operate. However, we have to get a better speed booster or adapter because now we don't have aperture control, which is not a huge deal. We're fine with the aperture being stuck at 2.8 for that position. Like, everything was in focus and the people were as in focus as they needed to be, but it'd be nice to have that control. So if anybody has a solution to that, let me know below, but for now we're kind of just dealing with it. And then the 6K Pro, we moved that, you know, to be that wide shot of the whole room. The other thing I worked on with cameras was adjusting white balance, going from I think 4,000 Kelvin, I brought them down to 3,000 just to make it look a little bit cooler. It looked a little bit too warm for my preferences. On the Sony, I picked a different color profile. Here's what it looked like before, and here's what that color looks like now. And then finally, when I was diving into the camera settings, I discovered that actual LUTs weren't being applied within the camera. You know, on the Blackmagic, you go to menu, you go to record settings, and you go to select. Are you going to be in, you know, film mode or video mode or whatever they call it? We select film mode, and then we go to the LUTs, and then we apply whatever LUT we want. I think we're just doing the film to video or extended video look. Another simple fix that we did is we actually created a thumbnail for the live stream, so I'll show you that. So if you look back through previous live streams, there wasn't really any system to how the live streams were being named, and there was also no thumbnail, so it would just grab a random thumbnail from the video file. And now we're kind of trying to work on coming up with a standard for thumbnail and title. You guys know me, I'm a YouTuber. I care about these types of things, but I think it does make a bigger difference, and your videos will perform better if you have good thumbnails and good titles. Actually, I don't think, I know it makes a difference. So I made this thumbnail in Canva. If you guys aren't using Canva, you really should be. Canva makes it so easy to make thumbnails. So we found this image of Dylan that a volunteer photographer took at their church and then dragged it in there, and then I just dragged the text in and then the church logo. Something as simple as that, right? It looks way better than having no thumbnail. So that's the majority of everything I did. I might be forgetting something, but that's all I can remember right now. Stuff to fix or improve next. So this is a bigger list, right? Number one, work a bit on mastering. Pull back the bass so it isn't overloading. I think I had the bass guitar a little bit too hot. I'm all about that bass, but it was too much bass. It was kind of distorting, and you'll probably hear that. It's almost like the bass frequencies were just really smacking against the limiter that I had on the main bus, as well as the limiter that I applied in the A10 Mini Pro. So I need to give myself a little bit more headroom and breathing room for how much signal, especially that's being sent into the A10 Mini Pro, and then what's being sent to the Boxcast encoder. The next big step is what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch out the existing Television Studio HD switcher, the control panel one. We're gonna switch that out with an extra Production Studio 4K that I have. I'm gonna bring it back. I'm going to Colorado. I'm coming back, and I'm gonna bring that back here, and we're gonna install that. That's gonna eliminate the need for the A10 Mini because the audio ports work on my other switcher, and then we can ship the Television Studio HD to Blackmagic to get that repaired, and then we can decide what we want to do with that later down the road. But what I want to do is use my rack-mounted Production Studio 4K and then just get a Stream Deck XL, the bigger Stream Deck like what we have at South Fellowship, for controlling the actual cutting of our camera angles instead of having to worry about having a full control panel. Because to me, for most churches, that full control panel, in my opinion, is kind of overkill for what you actually need to cut the different camera angles through worship. So just to be clear on my plan, and I want to get you guys' feedback for this, is we're going to replace this switcher here, and then we're going to get a Production Studio 4K with a rack underneath this countertop, and then all the cables and stuff coming into this guy, they'll be underneath the countertop. It's going to be nice and clean up here, and pretty much all we'll have is a Stream Deck when it comes to video switching control. And another thing that's going to be nice too is I think we can fix this monitor setup. Now that I'm looking at it, we could get like a regular desktop monitor, kind of like this LG one here, and have it right here. It's going to look consistent with this other monitor, and that'll just be, you know, taking the program feed or the multi-view feed out of the switcher, and you'll have Stream Deck and monitor. Boom. That's all we need for a video switching station. Nice and clean and simple. The next audio solution I want to work on is how we get our broadcast mix from Logic Pro, that computer that's backstage, to our ATEM video switcher in the tech booth. So the way it's currently set up is we're using the headphone jack out of the MacBook Pro running Logic, and we're setting over a 3.5 millimeter to dual 1/4-inch cable into a small analog mixer right next to it, and just going into 2 channels, left and right, for the broadcast mix into that mixer. And then the master left and right output of that mixer is going into the stage box on stage to the M32. So that's how it gets back to the M32, into a couple channels back there, which is kind of nice because if you're at the M32, you can monitor the broadcast mix, and then we can route that mix wherever we want to go. From there, it goes over 2 XLR outputs out of the back of the M32 in the tech booth to 2 DI boxes, or basically a stereo DI box setup, into the A10 Mini. So the problems we have there is, number one, it's too complex. There's too many like conversions going on there. Number two, you can't actually monitor the broadcast mix at the A10 video switcher. Theoretically, I could monitor it at the M32, no problem. But I'd like to have a setup where we could have more robust monitoring, both at the side stage room where the laptop is, as well as at front of house if you're sitting down in front of the video switching station. The solution I'm considering for this is getting 1 or possibly 2 of these Behringer flows. I'd like to get 1 to put in the front of house tech booth by the video switching station, so that the stereo broadcast feed or broadcast mix coming from the M32 could be, you know, put into channels 1 and 2 on this little guy, and then we could, you know, monitor that right next to the video switching station, and then out of main left and right from this little guy, it can then go into our A10 video switcher. And I think I could get another one of these backstage where the Logic Pro computer is for the broadcast mix, where out of Logic Pro, I could output over USB my master mix into this little guy, into channels 1 and 2, and then use the headphone jack to monitor back there by Logic Pro, and then output my main left and right broadcast mix from this mixing console to the stage box, and then to the computer, the M32. The other thing I considered, and now I'm thinking about it a little bit more detail, is trying to utilize Wave's sound grid more effectively to be able to output the Logic Pro master mix back to the M32, and then maybe we could figure out some other monitoring solution, sending the mix, back over the stage box on stage back to that room. It's kind of confusing. We do have Wave Sound Grid. We don't have Dante. I've thought about getting it. We're not opposed to getting Dante as well, where we could get the little Dante AVO adapters and figure out sending audio over IP as well. But we also have the channels available if we want to just do it the way we're currently doing it over the stage box. So this, I'm open to lots of ideas. Like, there's lots of different ways you can do it. Some that are simpler than others, some that are more reliable than others. I don't like the idea of having too many points of failure with too many connections going on here as well. So that's why I want to simplify this, and I want to have robust monitoring capability. So I'm open to hear your ideas in the comments. The next thing I'd really like to do is get the multi-view working in the broadcast mix room. We do have a TV screen back there. I think we just need to write SDI to HDMI converter or something like that to just get that functioning, because it was hard when I was mixing for broadcast back there and I couldn't actually see the stage or anything that was going on. I had to completely go by my ears. Another thing I want to implement is screen share remote control of our broadcast mix template computer, the Logic Pro computer, from front of house. And that's pretty simple, but it could give us potentially the ability to have whoever is running video switching on a Sunday could also make some subtle tweaks in the broadcast mix template and maybe even do the complete mix for the whole service. Because to be honest with you, when you get a template really dialed in for your broadcast mix, it's most of the time it's adjusting your vocalist, like who's leading a song, and taking 2 seconds to make that adjustment. Sure, it's nice to have someone who's dedicated with 100% attention the whole time to make even more of those nuanced mixing tweaks. But I kind of found myself mixing pretty minimally once this template was dialed in. A little thing I need to fix is the aspect ratio on the side stage wireless cam. You'll see there's a little black bar on top and bottom. I think that's just an in-camera setting I got to fix. Then I need to fix the focus on the drum cam. It's all blurry. I do remember focusing it in the morning, and then something got changed. So I got to look in to see if there's automatic focuses on and it got off, or if someone touched it. I'm not really sure what happened there. The next thing we really want to optimize is the lighting in the room. We don't need any new fixtures. The room has adequate lighting. It's a really nice lighting system, but especially the front lights, the way that they are positioned, and they're not moving lights. So we have to get a lift and get up there. But the way that they're positioned is that those front lights are throwing a ton of light on the back wall, which is black. And that wall does not look good when it is lit. So during worship, when they did lighting design, they have to keep those front lights down quite a bit, but then you don't see the front worship leaders and the singers as much as you should, and it looks too dark on camera. So you'll notice during the worship, I had to jack up the exposure on the cameras, and then when the preaching happened and there's a lot more light in the room, I had to bring down the cameras or else they'd be overexposed. And this is why it's important to have just consistent key lights that aren't changing. You can change all the colors and brightness of all the other lights, behind the band throughout worship and behind the pastors, but you really want to have consistent front lighting or key lights so that you're not having to adjust exposure on the fly throughout the service. So those are all the things that I want to continue to fix and improve over the coming weeks. And I want you guys to see that even my process is like, okay, here's some things that are apparent that we need to work on right now and fix this week. Like what's realistic? What can I get done in this time frame? And then let's just make a list, because at the end of the day, there's only so much time, only so much hands that you have on deck to implement these things at once. It's okay just to find a few things every Sunday that are realistic for you to implement and to fix while you're also doing everything else that has to get done on a Sunday. And here's where I want your help, and I think I already asked some of these questions. So how would you route audio from the broadcast mix room from the Logic Pro computer to front of house video switching position? And again, I want to be able to monitor the audio at that position. We do have SoundGrid available. But the reason I didn't really explore SoundGrid headphone amplifiers is that they're like super expensive. It was like $1,000 for like a SoundGrid enabled headphone amplifier, which isn't realistic for our situation. But I'm open to Dante. I'm open to getting those Behringer Flow, those little mixers. I think they'd be a really simple solution. I want to hear your input. And then I also want to ask you, how do you meter the master audio levels going out to your live stream? Like, what's too high, what's too low? Because on my A10 Mini Pro, which is the last point of control I had before it was sent to Boxcast, it was not clipping. But then when I go back and I listen to it, it sounds like it's clipping. So it's kind of a problem. I gotta, again, give myself some more headroom there and some more breathing room in the master mix, which is totally fine. But I guess I definitely don't have the problem where a lot of people have, where their live stream mix is just super, super quiet. One way I like to get a visual reference of this is I pull up the console app for my Universal Audio Aero interface that I'm using right here, and this just meters any computer audio that I have. So here's how it's metering for our live stream from this past Sunday. And you can tell it's hitting my limiter like too much and too consistently. To give you an idea of what this looks like at a church that knows what they're doing more than I do, let's go to the Bethel Church live stream. So you can definitely tell their mix it's loud enough, but it also has enough headroom where it's just not smashing up against the limiter. So lesson learned here. I'm going to be able to easily fix that for the coming Sundays. Another question, how do you tap tempo control your delay in Logic? We have a delay bus for our vocals, and I put on a nice stereo delay there, and I'm just trying to figure out, and I can Google this a little bit more, but I thought it'd be fun for you guys to answer this as well. How do you do it? How do you control the tempo of your delay if you're mixing for broadcast in Logic Pro? Because in Ableton Live, there's a very clear tap tempo button that takes care of that problem. So those are all the updates and optimizations we're making to the live stream at Grace Church in Melbourne, Florida. Hope you found these tips and tricks helpful. And again, I'm just continuing to learn more and implement new strategies myself every single Sunday. If you want all of my latest recommendations for live streaming gear at your church, check out the Worship Ministry Toolkit linked below this video. And like I said, I'll link the Grace Church Melbourne YouTube channel below, so you can check out the different videos as we're posting them week to week, and you can see how these concepts actually look, or the actual results of these strategies that I'm talking about here on the channel. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.